when you constantly ask me to donate my time and I'm not being compensated for it, that's when I have an issue.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting, thought-provoking episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast. My name's Jeff, and I'd like to thank you for joining me on this journey of reflection and insight into the toils and triumphs of a career in automotive repair. After more than 20 years of skin knuckles and tool debt, I want to share my perspectives and hear other people's thoughts about our industry. So pour yourself a strong coffee or grab a cold Canadian beer and get ready for some great conversation. And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast. It's still me, Jeff. It's still Jeff. But I have a new guest with me tonight. I guess that people are maybe just starting to discover, maybe just starting to find on social media. I just found him last week. He posted a video talking about the frustrations with the industry. And I reached out to the young man and I said, okay, let's discuss this. Let's have you on this podcast and hear your story. So I've got young Collin Draker with me tonight.
What's
Collin,
up?
say hello. So Collin, you know how we do things here. We kind of like to hear people's backstory and all that kind of stuff. But you just quit your job.
Yeah.
You've had enough.
I've been in the industry for 13 years and I've been pretty stable with, where I've worked. I've, jumped here and there every few years just to kind of, change the scenery or learn something new. But ever since COVID, I feel like the industry has changed. It's just, I've jumped around at a bunch of independent shops and, they all give you false promises and empty work bays. And
Right.
I'm just kind of tired of working for free or standing around doing nothing. So
have you been exclusively independent shops, or have you done a stint as a dealer ever? Or
basically from day one, like right out of high school, I started at an independent shop here called German Motorsports, and I just started as a shop helper. And within a year, I moved to basically like an hourly apprentice tech. Just gave me simple small jobs here and there, and I started buying tools. And I was there for 4 or 5 years. And then I was having my first kid at the time. I was really young. I was 21, 22. And basically, I was just getting stressed out. The owner's wife was having a bad day. I was having a bad day. And I just got mad and quit. And then I basically moved over to Toyota. I was there for, 3 or 4 years. And I liked Toyota. Still will always like Toyota. But it's a boring job working at that dealership. You do flushes, plugs, brakes, just services.
I was going to ask, was that a big change to go from an independent shop where I assume you probably, like you
German
said,
Motorsports
German
is what
Motors?
it's called, yeah. Yep, Colorado Springs.
Colorado, correct? Right on. And so did they specialize in kind of, I'm going to think by the name that they probably did, right?
Yeah, so back in the day, they specialized in German stuff. We worked on everything, though. So if a Ford came in that needed a tune-up or whatever, we did it. But, the owner was, a lifelong Porsche tech and Audi tech here and opened up his own shop in like the 80s or 90s. So.
Right. And then you jumped to Toyota. Did you find that a big change to go from that kind of shop to a dealership? Like you describe it as kind of boring, right? You said it's like, and I can kind of relate to that because I've done lots of stints at dealerships and did a long term. And some days, yes, it is repetition, right? It can get a little grindy. It can seem a bit boring, but did you struggle with that, or did you feel like, wow, I could really kind of, did it have some pluses?
So it was weird jumping from a real small 3-bay shop to basically a massive shop that had, 20, 30 techs in it. The first month or so, it took adjustment just to learn processes and how they do things. But after that, I kind of just got used to it. It's like you say, it's a big machine. They have their processes. Once you learn them, you're done. And Toyota is such an easy manufacturer to learn and figure out how to make money on that it didn't take me much time at all to be able to be proficient at the dealership. So,
And did the dealer
yep.
start you off at
Yeah.
flat
I
rate?
mean, at that point, I was on flat rate for 3 or 4 years. So,
Oh, so at the independent, you had worked your
yeah.
way up to a
Yep.
flat rate position. Yeah, right on. So when you said then your frustration with her, it wasn't really lack of hours,
No,
or was it
she just
just
she wasn't happy. So husband and wife working at the same business for 30 years. They tend to be grumpy at each other all the time. So she was just having a bad day and snapped at me, and I was having a bad day, and I snapped back by putting my toolbox in my truck and leaving. So, but I mean, now since I quit, my last job last week, the owner of that shop, Kirk, he sold it to his nephew, Chris, and he basically helped me. He taught me how to work on cars through that stint that I was there. He owns it now, and he basically just has me come in, diagnose cars, do a couple quick wrenchings on stuff, and I just do stuff on the side for him. And he's just basically helping me until I figure out, if I'm trying to get into a state college here to be an automotive instructor. But if not, I'm
okay?
chasing a lineman trade. So
So you want to
yeah, I
be
mean,
almost like
I
a
don't know
Paul
if
Danner?
I have the experience or the expertise that he does yet. I can definitely get there, but
Yeah,
his mannerisms and attitude just towards people in the camera, which I'm struggling with right now, is like spot on. So I don't know if I'll ever get to his level, but
yeah.
it's definitely a
Well,
goal.
I've known Paul a long, long time, followed him for a long, long time, and he was not as comfortable at the beginning as he is now. So it is a process for sure, and he'll tell you that. And you just go with it, man. You're doing great, honestly. You really are. But so when you're at Toyota, and so that the dealer you was that the job you just
No,
quit last
no.
week?
So
The
I,
Toyota
I worked
dealership?
at Toyota from like I don't remember, 2014 or 15 to 2018. And then from there, I quit, went back to a different European shop for a year, and then quit and went to like a mobile business that basically expertised in diagnostic ADAS calibrations and programming. And then that company was acquisitioned three
Okay.
times. And the third time, I it got bought out by
Wow.
Caliber, and I wasn't super happy with the management and stuff. So I left and I left and quit in 2020, and then basically just started jumping around background.
Mm-hmm.
I started jumping around a bunch of independent shops. So
Yeah. Yeah. And you're just finding, because like you said, 2020
yep.
is kind of when COVID hit for a lot of people. And it just, a lot of people, I think, saw the shop workflow. A lot of people's paycheck took a big, if you managed to keep your job. I didn't keep my job through it. I was off for pretty near a year before my business picked back up. But what? So how do I say that? That was that your experiences when you were sitting there and COVID hit? You just saw less work come in, or did you the general environment of the shop change,
No,
or
so
the
the company I was
attitudes,
with
or
is owned by Caliber Collision. It's a big body collision center here in the US. They own Protec, so it's a mobile company. So you drive to all the body shops in your area and service them. So they basically, when COVID happened, they put everybody on a guarantee. And I had a very well paying
okay,
guarantee. But I think mid year of 2020, they basically dropped it because workflow just wasn't staying the same because nobody was driving. And then that's when, yeah, my
right?
paycheck took a huge dip and I didn't have guaranteed pay. So at that time, independent shops were staying pretty busy. So
Yeah.
that's why I decided to just jump ship. So
Yep. Yeah. And then, so how come you've done the mobile thing, and yet you're talking about you're going to go a different pathway down the industry? And this is not me trying to talk you out of it. What about the mobile thing did you decide that's not where I want to, quit my job and go into doing business for myself? Because you hear us talk all the time, and I mean, I've had guys on the podcast before that are mobile guys and love it, do really well. Why, for you, Colin? What is it about
So,
it that you
I
don't
mean,
want
long
to do?
story short, I attempted to start my own mobile business doing ADOS calibrations and programming. The problem with that is basically where I live, my city, is majority of it is Caliber, and Caliber has their own ADOS company, right? So they're not going to want the shops here to use somebody else. So I just couldn't keep enough work on the
Yeah.
table to pay my bills. ADOS is still kind of a learning thing. A lot of independent or small body shops don't know about it, don't care, don't want to deal with the ADOS stuff, and then regular mom and pop repair shops don't want to touch or deal with it either. They just send it to a body shop. So
It's a big
yeah,
tooling investment, right? So, and that can be, so I understand, and that can be tough because you're in an area where you've kind of got a company that's got a pretty good lock on the business, right? And it's going to be hard for you to come in as an independent and A, get customers, and then B, they seem like the type that keep their rates low to keep a guy like you from, succeeding. That sucks, man. What's is moving an option
not
or
really.
not
No,
really?
I mean I could. I don't want to. I have I have my daughter, my
Yeah.
firstborn, and I'm not with her mom anymore. So we share custody. So if I moved, I'd be leaving her behind and only get to see her, every summer or whatever the case may be. So it's not really an option. I mean, I was born and raised in
Yeah.
Colorado, and for the most part, I enjoy it. So
Right on. That's tough, eh? Like it's I see so many guys that go that route on the mobile thing, and I think that's we need to we need to have more of those guests on and talk about if you're going to do it, this is what to expect, right? And this is the kind of tooling you need to buy, and these are the kind of customers you pick, and the kind of customers you don't. And these are the car lines you want to get good at, and these are the ones you don't. Like we could talk about that for hours. But what was the struggles when you were out there? Like, did you like it? Or did you find like Colorado? How does that work in the wintertime? Like, I mean, does you mostly do you get into a shop and you get to do the calibration
yeah, so
inside, or was there like the diag side of stuff? Because you hear some horror stories and they're like, I didn't even have a bay to work in. You know what I mean? Like
most of the
working
shops here
outside.
are pretty big. A lot of ADOS calibrations, you don't need a massive amount of space. I know Lucas, he on his new shop, he says he has like a dedicated ADOS space. And on some ADOS stuff, like Ford 360 cameras and stuff, like you need a massive amount of space to do them. But for most collision stuff, I mean, usually it's a front end or a rear end impact, and a radar sensor recalibration or a front camera collision or blind spot really only takes like 10, 15 feet of space. The hard part is trying to do it when there's no metal
Okay.
around. So that gets a little tricky, but there's ways around it. So
Right on. Because that's I like we joke some of the guys in Florida, right? When they get called on a diag, the hardest part is like, how long am I outside of the vehicle without the AC run before I start to overheat? And I'm up in Canada, so it's like mobile. You could do that 6 months of the year, and then the rest of the time, I've done road service for other shops that I've worked for in the past, and I've been on the side of the road in a blizzard trying to get a truck going. Right, like it's not. It's a different thing when they say, "Oh, I do mobile mechanics." Oh,
yeah,
really? Okay, what do you do? Well, I go out and I do some calibration. I'm like, oh, I've dug a hole in the snowbank to climb under a truck to, you know, get the starter changed out to get it off the snowbank. Had to do stuff like that. Like people just kind of look at you like
yeah,
you're
and
crazy, but
you know,
you do
Colorado
it,
winters are nothing like Canada winters for sure. I hate wintertime, so I don't want to work outside. So I would never do a mobile
Yeah.
business where I had to work outside. That's just not an option for me.
I hate the heat. So, I mean, the cold doesn't bother me. The cold, you just dress up a little more. Like I've totally, if you can keep your hands moving, it's not that bad. Yeah, I find anyway. I mean, you know, the heat is what drives me nuts. I joke and it's like last week we were getting up almost to 100 in the shop. I think it hit 105. And I was melting. I couldn't even, I felt nauseous. I was going to fall down. And people were like, well, it was 120. And, in our shop in Arizona, I'm thinking, how do you do that? Like, it's crazy. We don't have air conditioning in my shop. So it's, we just, in the summertime, we slow down. In the winter, we get a lot of work done. In the summer, we just drag. It's hard to stay hydrated and it's hard to like stay focused when you're
Yep.
that uncomfortable. But so you want to look into doing, you talked about you talked in your video that I just shared a couple minutes ago in the Changing the Industry group. Are you in that group, by the way?
Well, no, I mean, I'm not like part of the
Changing the
Facebook
Industry?
page or anything like that. I don't technically own a shop, so I can't be in it. So
So you can't be in the ASOG group, but you can certainly be
okay,
in the Changing the Industry group, because that is, you don't have to be a shop owner to be in there. The two are linked, obviously. I'll tell you this. This is not me lecturing you or giving you any kind of, worldly advice. You would reach out to a lot of people in there. When they see your video, you're gonna get flooded with people that want to talk to you about, how impactful the way you feel and your story and everything is going to have on them. And if it's a wealth of people that can give you guidance and perspective and help you. And this is not me trying to say, don't leave the industry. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. I'm just trying to say, if you want to talk to people that have been instructors, are instructors, they're in there. Everybody's in there. It's fantastic. It is a wealth of, if it wasn't for Changing the Industry and ASOG, I still wouldn't be a tech.
What made you want to get out of it?
Because it's just, so when COVID hit up here, I lost my job, and I had never been unemployed that long in my life. In terms of I've moved around a lot. I've got an attitude. I'm good at what I do. When I'm not happy where I am, I don't take it. I will speak up and I will say, that's BS, and this is wrong, and I'm that way. There's been more than one person that when they fired me or I've handed my notice, they go, you're a phenomenal tech.
I've been told the same
sucks,
thing.
Right? It's like, yeah, because it isn't what we were promised, is what I feel like. When guidance counselors in school and everything, blew up this is a, great industry to get into. And you talk to other people and are like, oh, you can make so much money and you work on really cool stuff. You can make some really good money. And once in a while you work on some really cool stuff, but it is a grind, right? And it's a grind. A lot of people don't talk when you're getting into it about sometimes the unfair pay plans, the shop politics, all the stuff we all know about. So that's why I never accepted it. Flat out didn't accept it. Just was like, nope, I'm not going to be part of the problem. I'm going to be part of the solution. And I always lived my life where I'm saying pretty much what other people are thinking. They're just not saying it. So somebody has to say it. I might as well be me, because maybe you can elaborate on that. When you've got a skill set that makes you good at solving the problem versus just putting a part on, you can always find work and you can always get pretty good pay. That's been me. So sometimes I think people have looked at me and went, well, we're going to take the attitude with the aptitude, because it kind of comes as a package deal, right? Like, he can be a bit of a grouch and he can be a little standoffish and he can be opinionated, but he can solve the problem. He can fix the car. That's what, I always, so when you say, well, what made me want to leave? Being unemployed that long when there wasn't good offers coming in, right? People are like, oh, do you want to go work at a Lexus dealer for $25 an hour flat rate? No, I don't. When I left a job that wasn't a Lexus dealer for more money than that, why would you think I'd want to go work on a Lexus for $25 an hour flat rate? You'd be crazy. Like, I live my life by the idea that, we used to say it a long time ago, $100 an hour times 0 hours is still zero. If we're not getting enough work coming into the shop, or it's not dispatched fairly, or you're in some kind of team pay plan, I'm not about that. I'm not a team player, right? The idea that in this industry that we say, oh, you got to be a team player. No. When you work in a flat rate dealership or a flat rate environment, it's not a team. You are every man for yourself. Your hustle is your muscle, and that's how you make your living. So the idea that I'm not gonna, don't get me wrong, I wasn't a prick that wouldn't help somebody, but people have heard me say, if I had to fight and I had to sacrifice and I had to donate time to figure out how that system worked or learn that pattern of failure, I'm not just going to give it to anybody, right? I found it. I learned it. Eric O says all the time, if I can do it, you can do it. That's what I think. It wasn't for me to give away my ability to somebody else just so they could make some hours. I always looked at it as, whatever you can't solve, Put it back in the pile. I'll get to eventually. I'll solve it. I'll make the money. Somebody has to. And it's not a real popular opinion, is it? When we talk to some shop owners, they don't want that. But yet, when you think about an incentivized pay plan, isn't that what
Yeah, I
hustle's
mean,
about?
you have to produce work in this industry, right? And that was my biggest gripe at the dealership, especially Toyota, is they pay on the lower end of the pay scale as far as manufacturers go. And you talk to the service manager about it, and they say,
Yeah.
"Well, Toyota's nothing but gravy. It's a gravy train. All you do is flushes, plugs, services, the occasional head gasket on a Sienna or whatever the case may be." But you're paying me. Back in the day, I started with them at like 17.50 an hour, and you're busting your ass just to flag that 150 hours of pay period in order to see a semi decent check. As whereas I can go to an independent shop now, get 50 to 60 bucks an hour, and I don't have to flag near that much work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my biggest
Yeah.
gripe with dealers
Yeah.
is they pay in the low end of the scale because they think that the ease of the cars, because you work on one manufacturer, makes you flag more hours. That way it shouldn't. I don't think because the car is easier or I know how to work on these cars faster and I get more efficient at it because I work on the same thing every day, it means you can pay me less. I think it's wrong. So,
Right. Yeah. It never sat good with me that there was two sets of times. There was a time for warranty and there was a time for retail, because I'm sure you saw it. We would see a car that needed a ton of work come in, and it was out of warranty, and you'd write the estimate, and then somehow that sucker got changed to warranty times, right? Whether to help the customer out or something like that. I'm not about
mm-hmm.
that. That's theft, right? If the car made it through the time period where it was supposed to be resolved under warranty and it didn't get resolved, didn't get addressed or whatever, and you bring it in and they sell the job, what it's supposed to pay after 100,000 miles or whatever is what it's supposed to pay at the very minimum. It's not supposed to be backed down to a warranty time to sell the work, to sell the job, to appease the customer, to goodwill the warranty, whatever nonsense you want to call it. That's what it is. It's nonsense. There's no reason to do it. Well, you can say, well, we do it to help the customer out. You're helping the customer at the expense of you and I. That's not okay, right? This is why I think we have the shortage that we do. And I don't, I'm not against flat rate and I'm not against incentivized pay. I just feel that it's always been manipulated, though, to it, Colin, you're going to donate 2 hours off your paycheck on this job times 10 jobs because we need that to sell the work. That's what it took. You're not okay with that. You can, like any good tech, you can tell to the dollar how
Yep.
much that's going to cost you, right? That's not okay. I'm not okay with it, right? But did you find that was happening a lot?
Toyota's not as bad as far as goodwilling warranty, like some of my buddies like GM or Dodges, but it goes back to the attitude thing. They're always wondering why techs are grumpy, or they don't want to talk to people, or they snap at their riders, and it's because you're selling this re-ring job on a Camry that's out of the extended warranty time, but you're goodwilling it, and somehow I'm paying the price because you want to save the customer money. Fine, that's great. You can goodwill the job to the customer, like don't let them pay, but you're not going to cut my time in half so you can do the customer a favor. And yeah, it's manipulative,
Right.
and I don't know. That's the biggest reason I'm leaving. Is just I'm tired of always being the volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of people telling me what I'm going to get paid. And it's most other trades, like you're on the clock, you're off the clock. So you want me to fix that? I'm clocking in. If you don't want me to fix it, I'm not clocking in. But you can't do that when you're in a shop. So.
Did you ever, here's what was going to be my next question. Did you ever, like you talked about a guarantee? Here's been my experience with guarantees is that it sounded really good until you realize that, like, in order to get the guarantee, you had to be there all 5 days or 6 days. You had to be there on Saturday. You had to take any job that they gave you, right? No matter whether it was somebody's comeback, whether it was some nonsense, like, intermittent squeak and rattle that only happens when it's raining and I'm turning left and hitting a pothole at a certain 62 miles an hour, that kind of stuff, right? If you went to them and go, this looks like, a bunch of BS here, I don't think we should even bother looking at this car. They'd be, do you want your guarantee or not? You have to do it in order to get your guarantee. And see, for us, a lot of it, like last place I worked that had one, the guarantee was 35 hours. We had to be there 44. And there wasn't lots of weeks. There was not enough work coming into the shop that everybody was above 35. So what it became is they manipulated you to say, well, you got to be here all 5 days. I'm the type where if by noon, if there's no appointments, like you talked in your video that just got dropped, you came in, there were 6 appointments, 3 people showed up, none of them were for you. At that point, I want to go home. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you don't want to pay me. I'm going to go, like, I like to fish. So it's like, I want to go fishing, or I want to go hang out with my friends, or I want to go do yard work. I want to do anything but stand there next to my toolbox and wait for work to come in on the hopes that maybe I can find something and sell on that car. That's not a happy, I'm not in a good headspace when I have to do that, right? And I get the feeling that a lot of us aren't, and we don't really talk about this. And I think that this is something that a guarantee is it's a selling point. We get people to, it's going to save the industry. No, what's going to save the industry is not manipulating, like you said, your techs to get paid a salary, which is what we call it, a salary. You're making them be there and do anything that, you treat them like slaves to give them, let's be real, a 44-hour guarantee isn't that good of money anymore. When we think about what some of the hours that you probably used to turn, I probably used to turn, if I'm not having to do a ton of diag heavy work, I can turn hours still. And I'm old and broke down, like it's not hard. It's you get a process, you get efficient. It's good, but that guarantee thing, I'm not all right with that. I'd rather be, I've said it before, I would need to go start with one to see how the shop runs. But I feel pretty confident if the shop is operating properly, we don't need it. We don't need a guarantee. I've always said, if you don't need flat rate, and you don't need a guarantee if your shops run properly. But yet you see where this is all going now, especially since COVID. Shops are enticing techs to apply with guarantees. And I think that is a red flag.
That all comes...
But how did it work for you?
That all comes down to the tech, though, is what they're willing to take in return for their time. So when I quit this last job I was at, I interviewed at a couple shops, and some of them have some weird pay scales or pay the way they pay the tech. And I basically just told them, this is how I want to be paid. I guarantee you I'll flag a lot of hours. I'm proficient. I do quality work. I know how to diag. I show up to work every day. But, a lot of these shops are so stuck in their ways, or they're afraid to take that chance on a tech, which I understand. But that's also why I just decided I'm completely getting out of the industry is, I'm done. I don't want to sacrifice my time for the hopes of good pay. I want to know it's there. And I've worked at a shop where I was a foreman on salary with a quarterly bonus. But again, shops can still manipulate a salary, right? They can get you to do more stuff than you need to. You can be a foreman, a writer, a shop manager, a trainer, a tech. They start adding more stuff onto you to try to get that value back. And either way, any pay scale you go to in a shop, I think is going to be manipulated. So I don't really even know the right answer, like what would make the tech happy, the writer happy, the manager happy.
Collin, I don't think there's one good right answer, but you made an interesting point there when you were talking about a foreman thing, because we see that all the time too. You talk to some foremans and they're like, well, it was really good at first, but I had no leverage for a pay increase or a bonus or any kind of thing because they kept going back to my production, and I'm famous for, I hate that word. I hate production, right? Talk to me about proficiency. Talk to me about efficiency. Don't talk to me about production. Production is manipulated. But you talk to foremans and they're like, well, how am I supposed to produce if I'm over there helping John solve that wiring problem? I'm over there helping Carl set that alignment. I'm helping, Mark get that broken bolt out of a back of a cylinder head, right? Instead of having to, drill it sideways and put a cylinder head on it, I managed to get it out with a welder, that kind of stuff. That's all unapplied, unbilled time, or It's not even unapplied and unbilled because it is, but it's uncredited to the guy that's actually doing it. And this is what I find with foreman roles is we sometimes look at the foreman role as, well, that'd be a great, role for a lot of techs that are really smart and, got a ton of experience in the product and stuff. But they keep manipulating that production thing and says, well, you didn't generate many hours. Like Michael Berg, the flat rate master, we had a discussion where he talked about some foremen come in and they go through the stack of work orders, the appointments, and they pick themselves 8 to 10 hours a day pre-sold out of those piles. And they knock that out so that they can then, do their foreman duties and still show production. That's kind of manipulating the system then, right? Like you're manipulating the system to avoid being manipulated as a tech, as a foreman. There's a lot of manipulation going on. I'm not about that. I worked with a guy that did that. It always left a really sour taste in everybody's mouth. It's to me, it's made up numbers at that point. You're not really having to inspect the car, sell the work. It was just pre-sold work that you took and did. Great, you made your hours, but somebody at the other end of the shop didn't maybe get that job. Maybe they should have had that job, but it didn't go to them. I've always felt a foreman role should just be like a salaried role. What did you solve? How did you help us out? Right? And just appreciate and pay them for that. The whole idea of production, especially on a foreman, I think is just, it's made up. Right. So again, it's manipulated. So, and did you have any positives?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy teaching, and that's kind of why I'm looking at being an automotive instructor. But when you're under the load of, worrying about, at least producing or being able to pay for your paycheck, and then on top of that, trying to teach others and help them produce for their paycheck, it just gets super stressful. And the shop I was working at, everybody was hourly, so nobody was in a rush. But, I always judge myself on like production and proficiency and how well I'm doing, my comebacks, because I care a lot about quality and I take a lot of pride in my work and I care about my name. And the last thing I want is someone saying, that guy messed up my truck or whatever. I judge myself heavily because I take a lot of pride in this industry. So like you, I mean, I started getting an attitude, I was worried more about trying to produce, and I felt like every 5 minutes I was getting pulled off to, help someone they didn't know what to do, or, help them diag or show them how to do this, or help the service writer explain why this car needs a water pump or whatever the case may be. And I never got time on my own to actually produce work and fix cars. So, I'd have one car in my bay that only paid 6 hours and it was in there for a day and a half. So
yeah, as you kept going back and forth to other things. And why do I have to go out and explain to the customer why it needs a water pump? That's the service advisor's job, right? Like the work order says it's leaking or whatever, it's noisy, it needs a water pump. Case closed. If the advisor can't do that and I have to step into the advisor's shoes, well, let's be real. Most of the advisors get like, a salary and a bonus, but a lot of techs don't necessarily get a salary and a bonus. If I'm going over there and doing their job, what's my salary and what's my bonus? It's a fair question. Like I always, for a long time, I used to say it was backwards, that the advisors should be on 100% commission and the techs should be on straight salary. And people talked to me like I was crazy, but I said, no, think about that, right? Who's got the investment? Who's got the training? Who's the actual product that you're selling, which is the availability of the techs in the back to repair and service the car? That's the techs in the back. The person, the admin, and this is not me, hating on advisors and running them down. This was something back in my Jaded days, which I can still go to sometimes, is that, why are they just getting paid to show up and I have to have all this training and all this investment, and then if no work comes in, I'm not worth being paid? That seemed backwards to me. It seemed the opposite of what should happen. Don't know. I found though, when I was instructing, not in it, because I was never an official foreman, but I had some tenure at the dealer. I'd been there a while and got to know the product pretty good. And a lot of people would come to me with a problem or something like that. I found it made me a better tech when I started to actually have to teach people right? Other things. You know what I mean? You probably found the same thing, right? It helps refine your process when you start to think, okay, if I was going to have somebody do exactly what I did or approach it the same way, you really polish that process up when you think about, well, what is it I'm actually doing? Oh, okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a scan tool and I'm going to look at, these PIDs. That's something you teach someone, right? It was the same. It made me better because then it hammered into my own head, stick with the process. But, you know, it it's frustrating, right? Like,
30.
how old are you? 30. Yeah, see, I'm 48. What do you find? How do you find the young people though to try and be that you want to teach them? Because sometimes we talk and you'll see in the groups and whatnot, people are like, oh, the young people are they're different, right? Like how we have to treat them and how we have to handle them and how you talk to them and some of them just. Do you find that that's the case, or did you run into that coming up? Like, did you work with a
Yeah,
grouchy old bugger like me?
the shop I came up in, the owner was, old school, just give it to you straight. And that's kind of just how I kind of developed my personality, is I don't beat around the bush. I'm very blunt, like you say, a blunt like a metal spoon. It's just get to the point and just tell them how it is. But yeah, with the newer
Yeah,
generation, the younger kids, the ones that are trying to get into the industry, they just they have that weird mentality of, you have to be nice, you have to be polite. They don't want to work to learn. They don't want to take the long way around to find the answer because they don't want to really learn the process. They want to know the answer so they can make the money. And, obviously like how we came up, you develop your processes on diagnosing complex problems by tracing it down from the beginning. And I was never given a hand. The shop owner would tell me, well, I would possibly let's say a car came in for a misfire. Okay, well, what cylinder is it misfiring on? All right, so how do you know, what are the four things you need to basically create combustion? And then you break that down, and then he says, okay, chase
mm-hmm.
each one, see if it has all four of those or whatever the case may be. And once you find that that cylinder doesn't have spark or compression or gas, then come to me and I'll guide you to the next step. But my hand was never
Yeah,
held, and nowadays the younger
right.
generation just, they don't, I don't feel like they have to work hard for anything. The internet age, everything's on Google, everything's on YouTube. There's no point in having the knowledge in your head. So,
Well, I saw that too when as I was leaving Chrysler. As Chrysler even had a system in place very similar to Identifix, right? So you could walk over and punch the VIN in, and punch in the symptom that you're experiencing. And if another dealer at another tech, another tech at another dealer had run into that same symptom and did a repair, they might have, and it didn't just come. I think some of it came from warranty submitted claims. But sometimes it was also an open forum where somebody could say, yeah, I did, this splice S, 286 underneath the seat, green and corroded, causing occupant classification module to intermittently go offline. I don't remember if that's the exact same number, but I remember because I submitted that case, right? I was the one that found one of the first ones to find that and say, you got an occupant classification intermittently going offline. Well, there's one of them hockey tape splices that Chrysler used to love to use on the inside of the car, underneath the carpet, and the water would get in there. It's Canada, and the splice would corrode, and the thing would go bad. I started to see that become a very real thing, even on the OEs, where they're treating it like a Identifix type process or approach to solving the problem the car's having. And I understand why they do it, because when I was there, your retail time for Diag paid 0.6, 36 minutes. And then if you needed more time, you had to sell more time. Now I see guys talk all the time about warranties not even paying Diag time, right? Like your time to figure out, like you talked about the water pumps leaking or whatever, coolant leak, Diag, water pump. Your 2/10 or whatever to figure out that pressure test is weeping out. You didn't get paid for that. It just rolls into your repair time, which I think a lot of us sometimes we just go with that, right? Because after you've done a couple hundred of them, right, you cut the time in half. Your Diag time is you didn't lose, right? I guess is what I'm trying to say. But if we added up all the time of what we really should have been paid for those even 2/10 or 3/10 to do a pressure test and find it, that's a lot of money at the end of the year that you didn't get paid
Yep.
under warranty. So I thank God I was very lucky because like I had some advisors and writers that were pretty good where if I looked at it and it was an intermittent or it was, Mrs. Smith is complaining about the squeak noise that all of them did. Well, there wasn't a fix for it. It was just, sorry, the fabric on your seat's going to squeak until it's, worn in. You got paid for your time to look at it. You didn't spend a ton of time, but you got to know the product. You went and got another exact car out of the lineup. You drove it with her. You showed her. Cool, right? Now, when I see guys that are talking about they're not getting paid for that, I tell them to lock their box and move out too, because I just think that, you can be paid. That's what everybody that's listening, you need to realize. You can be paid. Can they necessarily get paid for the claim? Maybe not. But at the end of the day, you as the tech, that's not your first priority, is whether or not they get paid for the claim. Because you got to remember, they can get one digit in the VIN wrong and still fix the car. The claim won't get paid. They can have, the process not filled out properly on the submission for the claim. Car still gets fixed properly. They don't pay the claim. So you have to remember that you as a tech can always get paid. The money is always there. Now that's going to really upset some people that are not in the dealer environment that are listening to this, but it's the truth, right? If you want to bring that car in and you want to get it diagnosed and you don't want to charge the customer or you can't charge the customer, you still got to pay the tech. At the end of the day, you still have to pay the tech. If you want to get something done, you have to contract a person to perform the work that you need required. That is in any industry that we know of. Yeah, in our industry, let's get young Collin to come out here, look at it real quick. We're not going to pay him. That doesn't need to happen anymore. In this industry, it doesn't need to happen. And that's so you're fed up with that, aren't you?
Now that you talk about it, that's one thing I remember about Toyota is when you do stuff under warranty, for one, they don't pay you for diagnostics. So if it's a very extensive electrical diag, I remember I had one, it was on a Tacoma. The AC was throwing a pressure sensor fault, and it took me probably 4 or 5 hours to figure out that the pin in the fuse box in the engine block was loose, causing intermittent contact, which was throwing that fault.
Right.
And there's no op code for it. And so when you do stuff under warranty, the other thing that you have to do when you do warranty work on Toyotas is you have to story it out. You have to run your time through ADP, and you have to find all the op codes. And I remember always bitching about, having to find op codes to get paid. I'm not even getting paid to find the op codes. That's not part of the job. And a lot of the techs would go, well, there's ways you can story it out. So you can add extra 3/10 here and 2/10 there to get paid for your diag. And I feel like you shouldn't have to do that at all. Like I chased this wire down, the circuit was open, I found a loose pin, I fixed it, took me 5 hours. This is the time I ran, watch the cameras. Like this is how much time I spent on the truck.
You didn't put any parts in it that didn't need, right? You just went to the start at the beginning, got to the end. It took you 5 hours. If that was in an independent shop and you were tasked with that and you solved it, there are people in this industry that would charge 5 hours for that repair, and I'd have no problem with it, right? You took a broken car, you fixed the car. The bill is X. Customer's happy, gets a fixed car back, signs for it. This nonsense of under warranty I never in my life hardly ever looked up a labor op, way back in the day, especially, right? I wrote up my story, typed it in, submitted it. The next day I got paid for the repair. I couldn't tell you what the labor op was unless it was like a TSB or a bulletin or something that we were doing repeatedly, right? And then you just point and click, right? Paste it over. There's your story, done. If the advisor paid me for, 4 hours under warranty and they only got paid for 2 on the claim, nobody ever took the 2 hours back from me, right? Nobody ever said, sorry, I just got paid because they looked after me that way, right? They made sure that, okay, because they all knew, and it wasn't just me, they all knew, the rest of us, if you're going to start to nickel and dime us, we're not going to fix it for you. right? If I know that I'm only going to get 3/10, you're only going to get 3/10 out of me. That's it. Why would I spend 7/10 more that I'm not getting paid for to give you an answer? Doesn't make sense, right? It's not my car. I didn't build it, break it, sell it, buy it. It isn't mine. Why am I going to donate 7/10 to Mrs. Smith? Because you talk about pride and you talk about, but at what point do we pull pride out of it and look at price? Because I'm not going to donate 7/10 to a customer. You know, the better part of, say they're paying me $40 an hour, I'm not going to give them more than $20 just for pride to tell them that I figured out what was wrong. Heck no. The OE can figure out how to pay me the other 7/10, or the dealer owner. Here's the other unpopular opinion: they can pay me the other 7/10, and they can do it.
Yeah, but
and they have the money for
hurts
it.
the service
They just
manager's
don't.
paycheck. So you can't have that.
I don't care. He can come. Then he can come out in the bay and he can fix the damn car, right? Same with the service advisor. I'm not against that. If he's a really top-notch service, say I worked with a service manager that, like, he'd been a tech. He came up through. You could go to him and say, especially if it was something older, like so I'll date myself here. If it was 2006 and you had like a 1991 Dodge in the dealership for some weird thing, you could go to him and he knew what was wrong with it. He had been a tech back when those stupid things were new. So he wasn't like a people person who was being made a manager, I guess is what I'm trying to say. He'd been a tech. He was a grouchy old tech, but he knew the product. If you don't want to pay the tech to fix the car, then stop telling the customer that you're going to fix it, because then we're not going to fix it. We're going to guess at it. We're going to go with the most likely thing. We're going to go with the thing, but we're not technically going to fix it or diagnose it, because nobody's getting paid to do that, right? So I'm not going to donate 7/10 to go and try and find it out of pride anymore. I used to, a long, long time ago, when I was your age. I used to, because I wanted to be that guy. I still take pride in what I do. I still like to be really sharp, and I still like to know, I love the challenge of a car that has kicked, my coworkers' butts, and I get it, solve it. Love that. It's a great feeling. But I'm not going to do it for somebody that will not pay me for it. There is no sense in that. And it doesn't happen in any other friggin' industry. This is what, for people that are listening, here's a young gentleman that is exactly saying what we all say. And here's you want to see the technician shortage? It's right in front of us tonight. There's a guy, very talented young man, that's going to leave the industry, go to a different facet, teaching people. And I've got some questions for you on this, Collin, then, who is fed up with the way he's been treated and is now going to take his skills somewhere else. So you take a top-notch. Are you master certified?
No, I didn't master certify because I didn't want to do warranty work, like the crazy warranty work that didn't pay. So I wasn't going to get over certified to get a $1 pay raise and do more warranty. It just didn't make sense in my head.
Yeah. So there's a guy that's very proficient with the product, very familiar with the product, can fix the product, and he's going to leave the industry because he's tired of the games and the hoops that he has to jump through to get paid. Now, Collin, talk about going and being an instructor. If you should get into that situation, how are you going to set these young people into this industry and sell this industry to them when it has, like, what are you going to tell them? Don't work at a dealership? Don't work flat rate?
Honestly, I've been thinking about that. How am I going to, teach kids how to be in the industry if I personally don't want to be in the industry? I don't know. I think the best thing you can do, and the biggest issue I've had with a lot of trade schools and like techs that we get that come in from trade schools that are fresh, is they teach you the fundamentals, right? Which is great. But at least from my experience, I don't learn anything until I actually do it. I can read a book all day long,
right,
but I'm not going to remember anything until I actually work on a car. So I think, a lot of these techs or a lot of these up and comers, they need to be taught shortcuts. They need to be taught how to be proficient. They need to be taught how to make money in the business. and they need to just be taught to like value their time. That's one thing I don't think the trade schools teach them at all is, you're a dying breed. You're getting into a trade that's going to be highly valued someday. Don't work for free. Don't donate your time. Don't be a volunteer
Amen.
under someone else's finger. And but yeah, to your question, I have no idea what I would tell them as far as the flat rate pay system, except for don't take a job that pays it, I guess. But that can be very hard.
For sure, right? Like well, a long time ago, I can tell you that if I had never left the independent that I was at and gone to a dealer, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have stayed in the industry. I was not getting paid enough at the independent to be able to buy the tools I needed. I was learning a ton, exposed to so much. Great mentor. But in 2001, at 2000, 23 years ago, $10 an hour did not pay well enough for me to be able to buy the tools and put food on the table and, gas in my very old car and pay rent. It did not pay enough. So when the opportunity came to come to a dealer and make $4 more and only have to learn one brand, and I was like, sign me up. $4 more an hour? Heck yeah. And then when somebody actually gave me, a scan tool and a broken car, which I wouldn't have got that experience at the independent I was, because nobody was mentoring me on that. That was highly specialized. We had like one guy that was really good at it and he did it. And it was a lot to learn. Whereas at the dealer, it was just like, here's a bulletin, here's a TSB, here's a flash, here's a DRB3. That's an old scan tool, by the way, for Chrysler. Go learn how to flash that car. And I just did. And then it was like, here's another bulletin that teaches you how to use this function, seal the evap system, check this, check that. That's how I learned the tool, was for doing warranty work on the product while I was straight time at the dealer for $4 more an hour than what the independent was going to pay me. Where the independent, when I was like, I probably did 2 safety inspections a day. I probably did some tires, some oil changes, and then they would do safety inspections where I would take the car apart, do all the measurements, write it down, have it looked at by a mentor, and then I would put it back together. That's what
so
their
from
bulk
where
of their
you're
work
from,
was,
I mean, I don't.
right?
So where I'm from, independents pay double or more than dealers. So is that how it is where you are, or is it opposite?
Certainly not. So what is a big marketing push here for independents is the fact that they don't pay flat rate, right? Flat rate has a very negative connotation around here when you start to talk to a lot of independent shops. Even now, like for instance, Midas is a pretty big chain up here. The biggest chain in Canada is called Canadian Tire. Even now, most of them have gone to where it's like, we don't pay straight flat rate anymore. We pay pretty crappy hourly wage, but you get bonused on all your labor that you sell. And sometimes you even get bonused on your parts and your labor. So when you look at an independent, hardly any independent I know of around here, none, pays flat rate. And they do not want to hire flat rate mechanics. They do not want to pay them flat rate because they feel that the quality is not there. I can understand where that comes from. So around here, sometimes the dealers will pay better hourly rate, but you will have to fight, and there'll be long stretches of where there is no work. And I'm talking like 3-4 days. January up here sucks. It's terrible. You starve. January and February, you starve. September and October, you starve. There's no money. There's hardly any work coming into the shop. So they'll pay you $38, $40 an hour, but you're lucky maybe to turn 30 hours a week. So then the independents around here might say, we're going to pay you 30 and you'll just get a salary, just $30 an hour clock in 44 hours a week. That's your pay, and you'll do anything that they give you, and it's cool. So the dealers, no, they're not paying around here. They probably think they're paying well, but it's like everyone else. And I still talk to a lot of them. A lot of them around here, most of them are not hitting 50 hours a week. There's just not the work. If there is the work, you've got too many techs in the shop fighting for the work that comes in. The used car market since COVID has exploded in terms of the value has gone up. So I think the guys in a dealership that are making good money, it's because they're selling a lot of used cars. So you're doing a lot of internal work, right? Which I never worked for somebody that paid us less for internal than they did for, like, it was labor, right? If it was a 12-hour job, it was a 12-hour job. It didn't matter if it was going to be internal. They never internal it and went, okay, you're going to do that for warranty time. That shit never flew. It wouldn't have flown. It'd have been an uproar. But so around here, to get back to it, no, dealers are not paying all that great. They're just paying more per hour. There's some good independents around. I work for one. He pays pretty good. You just have to find the right. I just tell everybody you have to find the right fit. Some of the chain stores around here, some guys love it. You know, there's lots of customers coming in. They're paid a little bit less an hour, but they get bonused on their parts and their labor. But they also have a reputation then of, we can all see them. Somebody will come in. I've seen it. They bring an estimate in from that shop, and I look at it and I'm like, this car doesn't need half of that stuff. And then you realize, okay, they're on an incentivized plan, right? And it's, oh, look at that. And it's January and it's really slow. That's why that car needs all 4 wheel bearings, all 4 struts, you know, a steering rack, and, you know, 4 tires and brakes all the way around. I'm not saying a car can't need that. I looked at one today. It needed all that, but it was a 2008 Taurus and we're in 2023. It's not a 2013, you know, Camry, the 10-year-old Camry up here. It's just different, right? So yeah, the dealers are not paying well. The independents are not paying well. My area, I feel, doesn't pay well as it should for where we are in the industry, put it that way. I feel like everybody, but again, around here, everybody is so scared to put their door rate up because they feel like they'll lose their customers. So what sets the door rates around here is the dealerships. Almost no independent around here that I know of is higher than a dealer. Is that
No, so I
common
mean,
where you are
some
too?
independents, the low quality ones, they will undercut the dealer, but a lot of the high end shops, they are overcutting. So the one I worked at that was salary was it was $200 an hour flat or shop rate. But then if we worked on classic cars, it was $250 an hour.
And what do they classify as a classic? Over
Yeah,
20
I
years or
mean, the
something like
shop,
that?
we
Or
had like a lot of fully restored muscle cars. So that was pretty much what a classic was. I mean, if it had a carburetor on it, it was classic. And those were the cars that I hated to
okay,
touch.
yeah.
I'm not an old car person. I like the modern stuff. So
Yeah. Hmm. 250
yeah,
is a
no,
good
I mean
rate
the
though.
shop, he's doing great. I mean, he's running a great shop. He has a 5-star Google review. I mean, he has a great reputation, but he also backs his work. You know, you're paying for the reputation, you're paying for the quality. So if say a bearing failed or something that you replaced, a wheel bearing, like he would take care of it, no questions asked. If a technician messed something up, like he would fix it better than it came in before it was even fixed the first time, you know. So
Right.
but here, I mean, even the shop I just quit, their labor rate was they keep taking it down because they're not getting work, but their labor rate was pretty high as well. So
They
yeah,
keep taking it down. See, and you'll talk to other people in the industry and they'll tell you that that's not always a good sign that you're
and
having to
I'm well
back
aware,
your
and this
labor
is
rate
another
down,
reason
right?
why I did not have a hesitation to leave. So
Mm-hmm. What can you? So, what did they do when you're standing around? I understand you're just attacking the business, but what did they do? Kind of things that you looked at and shook your head and went, "That's not the right thing to do in business." Can you
so
give us an
one
example
thing
about
that
that?
I didn't agree with 100% is the technician. Basically, they want you to. So there's a couple policies I didn't like. So first one is, you know, a car comes in, they're bringing customers in on a very cheap oil change, a $40-$50 oil change coupon, right? So it comes in for an oil change. Techs always lose money on oil changes. On top of that, they want you to do an inspection on the car, obviously. I mean, whatever, that's pretty common in the industry. But then they would want you to write the estimate on it. So you story out what it needs, price out the parts, add the labor. So you're writing the whole estimate on the car, and then you're just submitting it to the writer. The writer, will gaze over it, see what's going on, and then they will call the customer, sell it, and then approve it or decline it. What they would do to compensate the
Mm-hmm.
techs for writing the estimate is they would charge the customer an extra 30% on top of the labor. So say I'm doing a water pump that pays 10 hours. We would charge the customer 13 hours,
Right.
and I would get paid 13 hours to do that water pump. I think that's kind of crooked in that sense. But the other problem is you're writing estimates on all these cars. They're coming in on a cheap oil change coupon. They're there for the oil change. They don't want to spend $5,000 on a repair. So you're investing all this time writing the estimate, and the work doesn't sell. So now you're losing money on doing an
Mm-hmm.
oil change on top of writing up an estimate that could have took 45 minutes and not selling any work. And that's where I really
Yeah.
started getting
And
frustrated.
they may take that estimate to another shop, right? Estimate in hand. The other shop looks at it and goes, "Oh, I can immediately do that for 15% less because my door rate is lower, right? And I'm going to go to a second line of parts, and I'm going to put that on. That's going to trim another 5%. They got a 3-year warranty on their parts and labor. I'm going to give you a year. This is the conversation they don't have, but or no warranty at all. But for the customer, it's like you just took a $6,000 bill and you made it $4,500. The guy that was charging me $6,000, he's trying to rip me off.
And
right?
that's what was
So that's
happening.
what
So the shop that I was at it's a Euro shop. And so we would write them a quote for CCTA chains on a Volkswagen, very common, it's a maintenance item on those cars at 100K. We would write up the estimate for say $5,000, and then they would go to my buddy's shop, who also only works on European cars. And because of that 30% markup in labor, he's already beating them in price by, $1,000. So why would they have an incentive to bring it up to the shop I work at that has a nice waiting room when they can save $1,000? They drop the car off. They're not going to be in the waiting room, so they don't care, and get the work done there.
Yeah.
And I would constantly get calls from Chris. Hey, I just got another estimate from your shop. Car's here, and it rung through my mind. And I would talk to the service manager about it, and he'd constantly tell me, well, we're not German Motorsports, or, we're not your old shop. We do things our way. And I'm like, that's fine. Like, it's not my business. I'm just here to fix cars. But, when you constantly ask me to donate my time and I'm not being compensated for it, that's when I have an issue. And this shop kind of fairly open. I don't want to name the shop, but it's a really good shop. I mean, it was a good business. I think they're kind of growing and trying to become a corporation. They're becoming more like a Firestone, in my opinion. But
you were saying they were going to be. You felt like they're becoming a corporation.
It's just. I lost my train of thought of what I was saying.
So what? Like when you went to them and said, "I feel like this is very frustrating because," and they tell you, "Well, that's not how things are. Like you're not at your former shop. We don't do things like that there. We do things this way." Do you feel that to me that's very closed off? Because I've ruffled some feathers in some groups when I've said that sometimes the mechanic that's on the floor can have as good or even sometimes a better insight about how maybe the business should run than the people that are on the front counter running it. And I know we run it they have their reasons why, right? But I think sometimes when you're on the floor in the trenches and you see where things could be better, if you keep that open mind, you can see how the whole business in some ways can be better. Doesn't necessarily, I'm not trying to say one is smarter than the other, but I think to be shut off to what the tech's input on how the business can be better is very short-sighted in this industry, and it happens too much because there's a trend coming, I think, of absentee owners. And that really scares me because it's just, if you just come in and look at the numbers and the down, you don't necessarily know why they're down. You're going to hear a story about why they're down. And you're going to hear a lot of blame as to why they're down. But you don't see why it's down because you're not here. So, and I understand if you hire the right people, you don't have to be there. You let them do their job, the whole thing. I get it. But sometimes the tech that's on the floor, he'll be the first to tell you, or she, well, we went over on that job because I told them this X, Y, and Z was going to happen. They sold it without that buffer, and X, Y, and Z happened. And the efficiency on the job was shit. We went over. And that happened 10 more times last month because of. Then you can start to see a trend of, okay, they're not listening, right? They're just trying to sell the job to get the job. You have to sell the job because you need that job done the right way. You can't just sell it to get it. You've got to sell it the right way. And I don't mean sell it in how you sell it. I mean sell the job being done the right way. And that's where I see sometimes the tech's input can be more valuable than, I'll hate to say it, the advisor's input. Because the advisors,
Right.
they're just number people, right? They're just like, my customer has a budget of this. I need to try and get this job sold. So I'm going to do it for that. Oh, look, they came in and only wanted to spend 6. I got them to 7. The tech in the back might have looked at it and said, it needs to be 9. And you only got them to 7. Are you both winning at that point? No. The advisor looks good. But at the end of it, if it goes to shit, you both look bad. But the advisor can go, listen, I talked them up from 6 to 7. The advisor still failed because they didn't talk them into the proper repair. You know, David Roman talks all the time about the parts that when people are looking quote to quote, shopping quotes around, my quote will be higher because I'm not just going in there and changing the water pump. I'm changing the seals that are behind the front cover that are known to leak. I'm changing, all the belts on the outside of the cover. I'm not just taking your old split belt off and putting it back on. All that kind of stuff drives an estimate price up. Techs that know how to do that the right way, their estimates are forever like, holy crap. Like I've been accused of that. Your estimates are huge. What are you trying to do? Rebuild the car? No, I'm not trying to rebuild the car. I'm just trying to protect my butt so that if the car comes back, I said it should have this part put on. Customer opted out of putting on. See, it's documented right here. Customer wanted old scaly belt put back on. Now belt is squeaky or bearings are shot in alternator because old squeaky belt went back on. I covered my butt. I'm not trying to, especially when I'm not on a commission. If I'm not on a commission for the parts that I sell, I'm only on a commission for the labor, and I'm not getting additional labor for putting on a new part while I'm there, right? Because it's kind of an overlap situation. Why do they think I'm trying to rip people off? I'm just trying to do the job properly to prevent comebacks.
Yeah, but that's
Isn't that
like
what
a
this is
quality control
about?
thing that you can't do. Like, you don't know what the service writer's telling. They can be skipping the whole story that you wrote out on a computer. You could be telling that you're doing chains on this car, but you also need a new timing cover because you can tell that it's damaged or whatever the case may be. But the customer looks it up online. Oh, the change, just the part is, $100. Why are you charging me $1,000 for these parts? And that's where I think a big issue in the automotive industry is coming to, or a big issue in the automotive industry is right now too, is shops seem to be trying to separate the front end of the shop from the back end of the shop. They don't want the customers to be around or talk to the techs or have questions for the techs. The writers are trying to make it seem like it's like a transactional business. And in my point of view, I think customers feel more confident, more comfortable, and are more willing to buy repairs when the tech themselves comes up and talks to them, explains to them why the system is damaged, explains to them why the repairs are costing so much. Because, yeah, I mean, you're doing chains on a CCTA and, the shop might have quoted you $2,000, but the estimate that they gave you only has the chains, the guides, and the tensioners. But when you do these jobs, it damages the lower timing cover, the upper timing cover is plastic, it warps. The belt needs to be replaced. It's no extra labor. You just have to pay for the part. So the stuff that we are doing is a better repair. Even though it's more expensive, you're getting a more whole and better repair than the shop that's cheaper. And the riders, like I was telling you the other night when we were talking, I don't feel like the riders are conveying that. And you take the riders out of the shop, and I think the techs could still run the business. We can write up the estimates. We can talk to the customers. We can sell the work. We can fix the cars. We can deliver the cars. We can wash the cars. We can do everything in the shop Are we going to be efficient at it? Absolutely not. But the techs are irreplaceable skill sets because we can do it all. A rider cannot come and fix a car. A rider can't diag a car. And it's just, I don't see why they're trying to separate the business and keep customers away from the techs when the techs really are the 90% of the business, in my opinion.
Well, see, so you make a good point. But yet I'm going to ask you then, because you talk about and you mentioned how sometimes donating your time, but yet you sound to me like you're willing to talk to the customer. But does that mean if you're willing to talk to the customer, you need to get paid
No,
that time to
because
talk to the customer?
I think
Is
if
that how
I
I'm to
talk
take
to
that?
the customer, if they're hesitant on selling or buying a job from you and they ask me to come talk, I can spend 5 minutes explaining why it's broken, what needs to be fixed, and why it costs this much. And I guarantee you they will buy the job. But if the writer is the only one talking to him and he's afraid to ask me for my time, then that job's not going to be sold. I'm more than willing to donate 5 minutes of my time because again, I'm not donating, my time, my tools, all the money I've spent on my tools and all my knowledge diagnosing a car for free. That's what the customer brought the car in for. I've already diagnosed the car. I've told them what's broken. I don't have a problem spending an extra 5 minutes telling them, why that repair needs to be done. And from my experience, 9 times out of 10, that customer is more than likely going to buy the repair after I talk to them because it's kind of like that. And
Right.
I think I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day or today, and you were talking about basically why don't they, or it wasn't you, I forgot what his name was. But basically they were just saying, why don't they put signs out in the office of these shops that say that the riders are commission based?
Yeah. So that I think what you're thinking of is the
Yep.
episode I did with Dutch Silverstein, where Dutch said, not everybody
Exactly.
is true transparent, right? Which is exactly, he is one, shout out to Dutch. He is 1,000,000% correct, is that everybody wants to be transparent, but they're not 100% transparent because when you don't walk in, you don't see a sign that says, I've seen the sign where it's like they have to post it. Our techs are on a commission based pay plan, right? Of whatever labor hours. They don't ever say, our advisors are also getting a spiff too, right? They don't say that. So that person that they love, sold them the world, promised everything under the sun, didn't deliver on shit. They love that person, right? Because I apologize. That damn greasy mechanic, he screwed up again. Your car's back for. Meanwhile, they're trying to do everything for free for that advisor because who knows why? What's the motive is? Could want to date her? Could feel sorry for her? It doesn't matter. It's all wrong. And meanwhile, you're in the back going, I'm not getting paid for this. So I'm going to just take a wild guess, a Hail Mary. And is it right? No. But that person on the front counter in their customer relations role is selling them that they're throwing you under the bus to sell them the reality to the customer that I'm doing everything I can. It's those damn mechanics in the back. They're so incompetent. You know how hard it is to get good mechanics? All those lines. Right. Meanwhile, you just want to just give me an hour to diagnose the damn car, charge her $150 for diagnostic, and I'll get you the friggin' answer. Oh, she doesn't want to pay $150? She's been back 3 times now? What would have been the best thing to do maybe? Just get the $150 the first time, right? Anywhere you worked, did your advisors get sent on training?
So the shop
did you get
I was
sent
at when
on
I was a
training?
foreman, we went to ASTE last year, actually. Yeah, and I've been to STX with German Motorsports before as well. So, but a lot of the riders I've been with, they haven't received training, or they say they've had retraining, but I don't know. I think just being a tech, I see the industry different. I see how people, look at their cars differently than how riders see people look at their cars. So it's kind of like that white collar or blue collar thing. I feel like riders are like lawyers and techs are like the everyday working folk. So
you're going to love the episode that's coming up soon with Chris Craig from TikTok. Chris is known on TikTok, but Chris is the advisor. If you watch TikTok,
yeah, no, I know who you're talking about.
That's fine too. But Chris is an advisor. So very famous for pointing, having the conversations that just make you as a tech want to pull your hair out and punch him in the mouth, right? Because he's like, he'll play that devil's advocate of that damn tech. I tried to get him to do it for free and he wants to charge you, or, why are you charging her an hour to figure out the misfire when it only took 15 minutes? Like, Chris is that guy. When you hear his story and his perspectives, you're going to understand that there's a lot more in common with techs and some advisors than there is differences. I'll just say that. It's going to be a great episode. So you got some training. You said that a lot of you didn't feel the advisors did, or if they did were getting trained, it wasn't really having the effect on that it maybe should have. I feel as I start to network with more and more good shop owners, I start to realize how pivotal that advisor role is, and not just any advisor, the really good ones. Because like my time at the dealer, we had some guys that were established. They've been there a long time. They were good advisors. They were what I would call career advisors. But lately, what I see getting hired for advisors are people that last week. Do you know what Tim Hortons is? You familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
Tim Hortons coffee. No, they got that in Colorado. Tim Hortons coffee is like Canadian culture. Okay, it's a donut shop. It's a coffee and donut shop. It's like Dunkin' Donuts but better. So what they tend to hire, it's a true story, is they tend to hire last week. They worked at Tim Hortons and they had really good soft skills, really good people skills, right? Pleasant, upbeat, great smile. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. All that kind of stuff. Last week they were working there selling coffee. This week they're on the counter selling service on a $100,000 car, right? That's what they're doing this week. They don't know jack about how an engine works, but now they're selling service. This is what I think is a dangerous slope that we do in this industry sometimes, we used to really look at the people skills. The people skills are important for sure as an advisor. I'm not saying they're not. But you've got to have that fundamental basics, at least, of understanding. And if you don't understand it, don't try to, we have an expression, bullshit baffles brains. Don't try to baffle them with a bunch of technical jargon, right? People see through that now. Go get the guy that's actually proficient with the technical stuff, the tech, and have him talk to the customer. Don't have him spend an hour talking to the customer or a half hour, because you're just at that point, you're wasting the time. But don't give them the answer that you make up in your head. If you don't know, it's better to be honest and say, I can get that answer for you. I just have to ask someone, than to make something up that's inaccurate. Because the last thing they'll do, or the first thing they'll do, is they'll grill you for that. As soon as you make something up, I had an advisor tell a customer one time it wasn't that important to flush their coolant because coolant didn't move that far in an engine. Right?
Makes sense.
You know what I mean? True. I'm not making this up. That's a true thing. It did happen. There's no credibility there, right? It's gone. I think what you maybe suffered through was some advisors that needed some more training and maybe a different incentivized system or pay system. Maybe it was too incentivized. Maybe it wasn't incentivized enough. I'm not sure. But I think that you suffered through some advisors that had the wrong goal in mind, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So when you talked about, you made an interesting point. We'll go back to training. Because training for me, I went to AST last year. That was the first event that I'd ever been to. Changed my life. You mentioned how when you're at the dealer, you did not do the Toyota training because you didn't want to get specialized and make less money to do the more complicated stuff. I understand that sentiment exactly. But how do you go into now when you're going to be, and say you're going to become an automotive instructor? You've got to show value to training, right? To these young people.
I guess
how do you do that?
I don't know how to answer that. I'm not really a big believer in like the ASE certifications either. I think that, if you ask any customer that's ever had their car worked on what an ASE certification is, or if you look for that symbol in an automotive repair shop, they're just going to look at you with, dumb eyes. Yeah. They have no idea what it is. I think the most important part of the industry is just quality and being honest and integrity. And, a lot of shops nowadays, especially like the ones in the Changing the Industry podcast, they're obviously trying to change the industry, right? So they're putting more incentive on quality and honesty and everything like that. As far as certifications go, I don't really think that means I can or can't do a job. To be Master Toyota certified doesn't take a lot of effort. You get a slight pay raise on the hourly pay scale, but you do a whole lot more shit work. And to
Yeah.
incentivize a technician to go through a lot of extra labor that you don't get paid for, you don't get paid to become certified, and then get certified, get a small pay
Mm-hmm.
raise, and then, okay, great, now you get to do this warranty engine on this Highlander. Oh, and by the way, we don't just replace the whole motor. You're going to have to get the bottom end, the top end, the crank, the rods, the pistons. You're going to assemble it yourself, and we're going to pay you 12 hours. I don't know. I don't believe in certifications anymore. I think, not a lot of people even understand what they are. Anybody can pass a test. I know you're kind of opposing on that opinion. And I know Canada, you have to be certified in order to even technically be a technician. So I don't know how to tell kids, I can just show them what I can do. And I think the best thing to do is just show them the knowledge and let them choose what they want, what their opinions are, if they think they need to be certified, then great. If they think they can do the job proficiently and well with high quality and they don't carry an ASE badge on their arm, then great. But just
Mm-hmm.
don't be a schmuck or a hack. Sell work that's not needed to make a paycheck. Don't shortcut stuff. If if you forgot a bolt and it's going to take 30 minutes to put that bolt back in, just do it. Like, don't just throw it in the trash can. So ASC certs, Toyota certs, certifications in general, I don't really think make a tech. So
So by the sounds of it, what you're saying is Toyota didn't incentivize you enough to take the
no.
certification to get work. See, my story is that when I came into Chrysler, they were making the transition from in-class training to online training
Yeah.
to become certified. So when they had always done in-class training, you got paid to go to school. You were there 2 days, 3 days, you got paid. You got paid 8 hours to be there. Now, some guys would be like, I'm flagging 12 a day. I'm not going to school because I'm taking a pay cut to go to school. That's a shit attitude. I'm sorry. If you're listening and you think that if you normally flag 12 and you go to school and you get paid 8 and you feel like you're being ripped off and it's better to stay home and not take the training, I can understand why you're saying that, but pull your head out of your ass, literally, because you're missing the bigger point. Now, let me go back to my story. The reality is that I came in when they were doing it, and then they wanted all the online certification be done on your own time and not get paid. That's wrong. And I didn't do it. And I'll tell you why I didn't do it. Because I didn't need to do it. I had a fundamentals down to where I could diagnose the cars. And I got a lot of guys comebacks that were master certified in Chrysler. I
Right.
am not master certified in Chrysler. I am not master in anything. Not all. So did I need the certification? No. That's my point. I had processes, I had experience, I had fundamentals, the way of how I approached the problem that got the car fixed. And it wasn't just Chrysler. When I went on to Hyundai, I fixed a lot of cars at the Hyundai Master Tech. Didn't fix it. I fixed it. Did I ever take a minute of their online training that wasn't paid for? Nope. I'm not going home after 5 o'clock at night and logging into Nissan or Chrysler or Hyundai and doing a bunch of tests on volt drop and AC current, all that stuff just to get a click so that your labor op gets paid under warranty. Not doing it. The car got fixed. Cool. I don't need to be certified. And that's a terrible attitude. If you're not going to pay me for it, I'm not going to donate the time. Now, if you want to give me $25 for every test I complete, because if it takes me an hour, sure. Why not? Let's do it. I can use the money. I'll sit there and whack out 6 of them in one night. There's $150. Go to sleep. No big deal. Great. Made $150. Buy some fishing gear. I didn't need the certifications to get the work. And I think you and I kind of saying the same thing. But when I look in the aftermarket sector, training is a big deal. because when I was in the dealership, I could rely on pattern failure. I could rely on experience. I had 10 other guys that had worked on the product that if I was stuck or I needed a second opinion, I could go to them. I had a whole parking lot of known good parts, and I was fast at swapping them parts. So if I wasn't sure, I could walk out there and yank that throttle body off in 0.6 or 6 minutes, put it on, drive it. Okay, TPS fixed it. Cool. Needs a TPS. Example stuff like that. Did the certification, any of the courses, the tests that I would have taken help me with that? Nope. Because I only had 36 minutes to solve it, right? But I feel in the aftermarket, when we're starting to actually get good now at selling diagnostic time, I think we all in the industry have an obligation to attend training, to take training. Now, I'm not talking about ASE certification. I'm not talking about testing and certification. I'm talking about training. I'm talking about Scanner Danner Premium. I'm talking about Brendan Steckler. I'm talking about Keith Perkins at L1. I'm talking about Brendan Dills at Jarhead. I'm talking about all these brilliant minds in the industry. PJ Walters at Voltage Drop Diag. All these guys all have one thing in common: a lot of training to make themselves better. So this is, Collin, don't take this as me as lecturing you. I'm just drawing the parallels between how I didn't train at the dealership any different than the way you did. There was the wiring diagram. There was the car. I got to the solution of it. But when I came out of the dealership and I had to start applying my process to different makes and models when I didn't have pattern failure to rely on, that's when I realized that I needed to train more. The certification training that I would have gotten at the dealership wouldn't have done me a lick of good. It was already fundamentals. I just had to, can you do Ohm's law again? Yes, I can. I've been doing it for 25 years. I don't need to take another damn test on it to show you that I can, just so the claim gets paid. That's horseshit. But training is key. Training is important for sure. But so I'm not ripping on you. I'm not ripping on you because you didn't, because I understand exactly why you didn't. Understand. So please, if anybody's listening and you hear this from Collin or myself, don't think we have a bad attitude. Just think about how much unapplied or unpaid time you want to give to your business, your career, and that's what you choose to do. I did not choose to do that.
Well, refreshing on that topic, like Mopar now will pay you to train. I'm technically a level 1 certified Mopar tech. I worked at Perkins as a recon, or at Dodge as a recon tech for a few months, and they paid me to basically just get certified. So you go home, you take the tests at home. They're brain numbingly boring and completely easy to pass. So,
but that's that dealer is paying you. Yeah, it's a dealer policy, right? It doesn't have to be. Yeah. Every dealer doesn't have to do it. That's the thing that people don't like to talk about, is that one dealer may see the value in it and the next dealer doesn't. It's good. It's cool. If you don't see the value in it, I don't see the value in it. People are like, well, what do you mean by that? If you don't see the value in paying me to do it, then why would I hold the value to it, right? Whatever I want to learn is to make me a better tech. If you're not offering me something that makes me a better tech, I'm not going to sit through it. I'm like you, right? I need to have tools in my hand. I need to have a car in my face with a problem. If I stare at the screen too long and just look at a wiring flow, I can, even if I sit in a classroom in AST, after about 3 hours, I'm like, okay, can I get up and walk around? Can I look at can I get under the hood and see this break in the wire that is there? Because otherwise it's all becomes theory at that point. And my brain doesn't process it that well. I can do it, but I really have to force myself. I think it's important that we all in the industry train. I think that the advisors need to train more. I think shop owners need to train a ton more. I think that's one of the biggest problems right now is that we're having, why the technician shortage is here, why you're leaving. There's shop owners that are not training, business owners that are not training. And if they are, they're not implementing, what they're taught. They come out of there and that's a great idea. Just came home from AST, great ideas, going to change this, going to change that. Then they don't change anything. They don't implement it. That's huge, because as we hear the shop owners come in and say, I'm going to stop sending my guys on training because when they come home from the class, I still have cars that are misdiagnosed. I still have, whatever, right? They're not implementing what they learned. They're not putting the process in. Hey, we work for a shop owner that maybe doesn't implement the processes that they learned, right? We're all guilty of it. It doesn't matter. It's not, it's I'm what I'm trying to do through this podcast is to bring us more to where I understand the plight of the business owner and they understand better the plight of the mechanic. I can certainly show them your story, my story, hundreds of other. I'm going to be around a long time. I'm going to piss a lot of people off with who I'm going to interview and what they're going to say. They're going to hear a lot of people that are jaded, because that is how we get to where, we can talk about in 10 years time, we can talk about somebody that went to your class, Collin, just like we can interview people that sat through Paul Danner's classes and hear the effect that they had on his career. How they, in 10 years time, Collin, if we're sitting here and I get to have a student on of yours and he says, Collin was my instructor at wherever and he changed my life. That's awesome. That's not a loss for the industry that you're moving away from it, right? But what I don't want to see is a guy with your talent and your skill set. What was the other thing you said at the beginning? You were thinking about being a lineman?
Changing trades completely.
See, we're trying to avoid that happening, right? So this is not me making a pitch to you and a plea to say, Collin, don't do that. You listen, at the end of the day, man, you do what is right for you. That's all we're supposed to do, right? And it's nobody's right or place to tell you that you shouldn't. To heck with them. You do what you have to do. But the whole point of this is to try and avoid some of that, right? It's okay if you move around the industry. We just don't want to see any more young, talented people leave the industry. That's what's hurting us. That's what's killing us. It's what's the biggest obstacle right in front of our face right now is the people that are leaving, because like you talked about, the young people that are coming in, it's different. And we're having a hard time making it work with them, right? We're not giving up hope on them, but it is a different thing, I hope that you get your instructor gig. I hope that works out for you. And I hope that you remember, the cars that kicked your butt and the lessons you learned. I hope that you can pass it on to the people that you're going to have, in a classroom one day. I can, get into changing the industry, get into that Facebook group and really start to reach out to people. There will be people that can help you through networking that will show you what to do, how to make it better for you. They're not going to gripe on you and tell you that, you're a quitter and you should have stayed a mechanic. They're not going to do that. They're not. They're going to show you, well, this is, Sean Patrick Tipping has a diagnostic podcast, another diagnostic podcast. The name of it eludes me right now. God, that's embarrassing. He was an instructor. He taught at a college. Now he does a mobile repair thing, right? Keith Perkins, L1 Diagnostic, an instructor. Matthew Skundrich, good friend of mine, instructor. There's lots of guys. Yeah, there's so many people. So many. My buddy Scott Hicks just started as an instructor now for CarQuest. Like Brendan Steckler, there is no shortage of opportunity for you at all. That's my point on this long ramble. So don't feel that the group doesn't have anything to offer you because you're no longer a tech. Keep connected with us. Keep networking with us. We can help you, man. Everybody wants to help you. Your video touched a lot of people last week when you dropped it, because I was like, what a perfect timing when we're always having this conversation for somebody to have the guts to get up there and say what they're frustrated about and deliver it with a very good attitude, very professional. And I thought, okay, I need to talk to this person, and I want to thank you.
I feel like not enough techs are speaking up nowadays, and it just goes along with, being an egotistical, bad attitude technician. I'm just I'm tired of holding it in. You can only tell so many people that don't care before you just put it online, which is what I did. And I'm not saying I'm perfect or I don't make mistakes. All techs make mistakes. We misdiagnose cars. We forget to put a bolt in. It happens. I don't know everything either. Going to AST last year, opened my mind as to how much stuff about cars I do not know. But
Mhm.
it's an enjoyable trade. I'm not trying to push anybody away from it, but just the comments I got on that video that I posted, pretty much 98% of them all agreed. And it's kind of eye opening. And that's I started reading through them Sunday night, Monday morning, and I'm like, it's not just me that's pissed off. So,
You're certainly not alone. Not even close. Not even close. So don't feel like you are. And it's, I want to thank you for being so honest and willing to talk about it. Cause I mean, I didn't want you to come on here and think that I was, trying to expose you or, take advantage of the situation or something like that. That's not what I want to do. I want, if you've got legit gripes and good perspectives, there's no better place to get it out there and no better time than right now while you're feeling it, right? I don't want to hear people that say after 20 years in the industry, this industry still sucks.
right.
That was me. That was me a year ago. Going, I've been doing this 25 years and the industry sucks. That doesn't help anything. And
So let
I
me
shouldn't have
ask
been
you
that.
this: what made you
If I'm going
come
to,
back? Is my question.
so because I'm addicted to the challenge of it, honestly. Like nothing feels better to me than taking something that other people struggle with as a challenge
Yeah.
and getting to the bottom of it. I don't think about how long it took me. I don't think about how much money was spent getting there. I just look at it as like if they're committed to getting to the root of the problem, I'm your guy. Because it's not like I'll say I can fix anything. There's certain brands I'm not touching. Like I don't touch Euro cars. They held zero interest in me. I don't like the customers. I don't like the cars. I don't like the technology. I don't like their goofy wiring diagrams. I don't even, if you said to me, I'd be like, sucks,
So you
Chuck.
like the challenge, but you don't like Euro cars? Come
I
on.
can recommend. Exactly. I don't like the customers. I got a lot of jaded things have happened working on Euro cars at shops that weren't. So here's where it comes from. We didn't have good scanners. We didn't have good service information. Right. So when you're looking at a wiring diagram and the wires are wrong, and you're looking at a
Yeah.
scan tool and the data is wrong, and then somebody's talking to you how long it took you to solve that, guess what? I'm not going to gamble when I know that I don't have a prayer of winning. That's a sucker's bet. I'm going to gamble when there's at least some odds in my favor. And that's so I like a challenge on stuff that I'm good at, I'm familiar with, right? If you give me a domestic car, you give me a good scan tool, some good service information, yeah, I'll get to the bottom of it, no problem. But I just don't have, I'm not comfortable on Euro. I don't like it. I don't have enough experience. The experience has not been good. I'm totally okay with being able to walk away from it and say, I'm not your man.
Yeah.
It's all right. In time, if I got exposure to more of it, would I? Sure, why not? It's still just a mass airflow sensor. It's still just an EGR valve. It's still just a coolant sensor, right? The stuff doesn't work all that different. I do work on, I've done some check engine lights on some Volkswagens. Do I like it? No, I hate it. I hate the bolts. I hate the tooling. I just hate it. But I love the challenge of taking something that won't run or doesn't run right and making it run. That is addicting to me. When I see something that somebody else struggled with and I get it, I'd almost do that job for free. Almost. Because it's so to be, I'm an arrogant jerk sometimes. I'm going to be a boisterous dick. I can stick my chest out, puff it out pretty good and go, see, I did that. You didn't do that. That's my days at the dealership because that's what branded me into this. I don't care about how many hours you turned. We've got 4 cars outside that you can't fix and I can. Congratulations, you turned a bunch of hours. You did a bunch of brake jobs. High five. oh, you can't fix those cars? Shut up then. Go sit back down in your corner. Leave me alone.
Right.
That's how I was. Okay. That ego gets addictive. That's why I came back to it. And I know I was put, when people say I was put here to do this, I know that this is the trade that I was intended for. My father was a bodyman, a collision guy. He used to tell me that he never wanted to see me work on cars. He used to tell me all the time, and I was like, Dad, I'm going to be a mechanic, not a bodyman. I'm not going to get all dirty and breathe that nasty stuff in for less money. Watch this. I'm going to make this stuff go fast. And he just kind of chuckled and laughed. So I grew up around it. And is it in my blood? It might be. But that's why I came back to it, because I get addicted to the challenge. And there's a lot of us that do. I talk to some really sharp guys all day, every day, and they're addicted they hate not knowing what's wrong with a car. It drives them crazy. Paul, you've seen Paul Danner in some of his videos, right? When he is beside himself with trying to get done, he is just like possessed. Every great tech has that in them. So I think it's just a situation of, can I do it for much longer? No, I've got bad knees. I got bad elbows. I got bad shoulders. My hands hurt all the time. It's too many years of doing it. It's hard on you. But now how do I transition out? That's scary. And we've had those conversations. I talked with Dutch, and what is there for an old mechanic? What is there to do? Well, my friend Brian Pollock and I talked today with another friend of ours about maybe there's a job where, when you talk about everything you had to do for your shop, right? Write the whole estimate, do all that. There's some shops that are actually thinking about making that a position. They call it an estimator. So there's a service writer and an estimator. The service writer sells a job. The estimator is the one that takes what the technician says it needs and make sure that all the parts that are going to be there are quoted, to make sure that if the vehicle is in a condition where it requires extra labor to perform the repair, that gets added. They can look at it and go, yeah, that exhaust manifold would have been come off in 2 hours when it was brand new. Now every bolt is no longer a 10 mil bolt. It's like an 8.2, and they're all rotten, and we're going to be in there with a torch and a welder. Yeah, we're going to triple the time on that. That's what an estimator's job should be. And I think that if that starts to become a popular position, I could see myself doing that. Some kind of foreman role or some kind of that role within a business, because I can talk to the customers. But it's scary, man. It's scary. It really is. I want to thank you for being on here tonight. Really, it was, I didn't know how this would go, because you talked about you hadn't really, you'd done your videos, but you hadn't done a podcast. And I want to thank you for being on here. It was a really, really great perspective to hear what you've been struggling with and what you're struggling with right now. And dude, I want to see you. I want to see you succeed. If you want to become an instructor, I want to see you make that happen.
That's the goal. Yourself. We'll see what happens. I mean, cards aren't always in your favor, but that's where I'm headed. But yeah, thanks for having me on. This has been eye-opening, and I'll definitely check out the Changing the Industry Facebook page and see if something can change my mind. I don't know. I'm pretty stubborn, so I highly doubt that's going to be the case. But
hey, if you could do me a favor real quick and comment on, and share this episode, I'd really appreciate it. And please, most importantly, set the podcast to automatically download every Tuesday morning. As always, I'd like to thank our amazing guests for their perspectives and expertise, and I hope that you'll please join us again next week on this journey of change. Thank you to my partners in the ASA group and to the Changing the Industry podcast. Remember what I always say, in this industry, you get what you pay for. Here's hoping everyone finds their missing 10 millimeter, and we'll see you all again next time.